Hello and welcome to this RedMonk conversation. My name is Kate Holterhoff, Senior Analyst at RedMonk. With me today is Erin Schnabel, Distinguished Engineer at Red Hat and Council Chairperson at the Commonhaus Foundation. Before that, she worked at IBM for 21 years and transitioned after the acquisition. Erin, thanks so much for joining me on the Monkcast.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, although I invited Erin onto the Monkcast to talk about Commonhaus and the state of open source foundations, I think it would benefit our listeners to hear a little bit about your background, particularly as it intersects with the challenges of open source, a subject I know you have lots of thoughts on. So can you just survey for us a little bit about your career, your educational highlights, whatever you think is relevant, so that we have a better understanding of, first, what bodies you have helped bury over the years, and second, to really mix memes, some of the dumpster fires you either helped light or have been trying to extinguish.
Wow, some loaded questions. So I started right out of college into IBM. It's 20 million years ago, dinosaur era, right? So I started, so in the pile there that you didn't mention, which is neither here nor there, is I'm a Java champion. They nominated me at some point, which is awesome. But I literally started coding Java as a wee college student with like the first versions. So I've been doing Java stuff like the whole way. And I started at IBM working on the mainframe, actually, for the iteration of WebSphere before it was WebSphere. But then some of my first like mainline code path modifications were working on WebSphere application server as it brought Java in on top of all the C stuff, and it started kind of swapping things out. I first ran into James working on Liberty. So he used to do a lot when we announced WebSphere Liberty, which was my baby per se, right? It's not like I worked on it by myself, but I literally got to work on the prototype that before the prototype, it was the coolest experience ever. I got to work on the idea all the way until it was WebSphere Liberty, like as an adjunct to the application server product. And it's now an open source project and all of those things. So the only reason I mention all of that is just to say I have been in and with the Java ecosystem forever. It feels like. I am very keenly aware of my age because it's turning, I mean, age is just a number, but it's turning into numbers that don't make any sense anymore. Like, I'm not that old. What are you talking about? What? And I know how old I am. And I know that I was on, I like to call it, there's like a generation of Java developers, and I think a lot of them are still active even in the kube space now, who were like in the middle of the birth of the app server and how hard that was. That was like a lot. I mean, we have Kubernetes now, and it still doesn't do everything that the app servers did. It's like it has not gotten back to some of the capabilities that it had. That was hard work, super labor intensive. I was on the younger end of that cohort, you might say, like all the cohorts that was seriously involved with creating an application server, what that was supposed to do. I was on the younger end of that cohort, which means a lot of the libraries that we really like to use were all born then, and all of those people are going to be about ready to do something else sometime soonish. Okay, now what? What do we do now when everybody wants to go do the next thing? And that's what kind of, it being in and around this ecosystem, that's kind of what started me on the foundation question, right? We're getting to the place where even some of the projects who were like a never foundation are going to be like, well, maybe foundation. Okay, so if the answer is from no to maybe, the question is which one and why? And I've been like, I have friends that work on different, when you think you want to start a new thing, what do you do? The first thing you do, obviously, is you talk to all your friends. It's like, why not? What do you look for? What doesn't work for you? Like, you give them like the 20 million questions. And, I started really thinking about the why not, or which one, or what doesn't work, or what works. And I started to feel like there's room for something else now. Because the other thing that's happened in the literally 20 years since a lot of our current foundations were born is like the whole ecosystem for how we support each other has changed. And that leaves some room to create something with some new rules. That's way more than you asked me for. I'm so sorry. Most rambly answer ever.
Not a bit. No, that's what we're here for. Okay. So, but yes, you've given me a lot for us to chip away at here, to dig into. I was super interested in what you said about the sort of Java ecosystem. So I guess my first question, has to do with that. And of course, Erin and I met at DevNexus, which is a Java conference. That's where I learned about Commonhaus. And a number of the projects on Commonhaus are Java projects. And I guess I'm curious, what is it about Java that is creating this impetus for us to rethink the way that open source foundations function today?
So it's so funny. Java is a hugely capable language. And as we know holistically, like if we look at the computing industry as a whole, once some platforms get to a certain amount of steady state functionality, they never die, ever. Which is why when COVID happened and everybody was at home and then all the COBOL stuff stopped working and then there was like a freak out meltdown because COBOL still runs everybody's payroll way down in the, right? Like it never dies, ever, never, never, ever, never. And like I mentioned in passing with that whole big rambly answer, we have a lot of very essential business that is run on Java stuff. The Java stuff is not going anywhere. And as it has evolved, like it's a very capable, performant, enterprise grade, super awesome language. So it's not going anywhere for new workloads, right? So it's like we've got old workloads that are going to be on Java forever, and we've got new workloads that are still really well suited for Java. So it's like Java hasn't, because of Maven Central, because of how it does its package management and that kind of stuff, like it really does have an ecosystem. These libraries live forever. And it's that long-term evolution that starts to create this conversation about what should happen and how should things be maintained. Because forks with Java projects can be pretty extensive and expensive. Like the ripple effects are wide. They just go because of the way everybody has dependencies. Depending on what you change, like it just really can ripple out beyond what you may have expected. And that's what brings to mind, like, okay, so how can we improve longevity or preserve longevity for some of these libraries to avoid forks or something as these things age? Because we know they will. And because it's Java, it will never die. It'll just keep going forever.
And so there's something about the sort of longevity, the staying power of Java, the ecosystem, and the fact that your personal Rolodex involves a lot of Java developers. All of this is leading Commonhaus Foundation and the folks that have joined you on this journey to rally them first to say, maybe yes, we need a foundation for these projects. Okay, so you mentioned James in passing, who is my colleague at RedMonk, James Governor. He's written a few things recently about the importance of foundations right now. And so I'm thinking of his piece, Open Source Foundations Considered Helpful, in particular. But also, this is something that he tweets about often and has obviously been thinking about for a long time. And everyone at RedMonk has been talking a lot about licensed rug pulls in the era of Valkey and OpenTofu. So we are keenly aware of the need for foundations right now as a solution to ensuring that developers don't end up with a project that is suddenly, under a different license than they anticipated, or, a whole community is suddenly looking for an alternative to ensure that there are, that projects that are built with them, either are we going to fork this or are we going to find a way to make this work with everything, right? So this is a huge problem. I don't even need to mention the XKCD about maintainers and the sort of burdens that are put upon them right now. It's almost a cliche at this point, but so that is what I'm hearing.
The random guy in Nebraska is totally, yes, it's the random guy in Nebraska. We all sympathize with the random guy in Nebraska.
Absolutely. I know he's doing good work. I am sorry though, that is, on anyone's shoulders alone. And so foundations, it sounds like, can help with that. So excellent. So it's on our mind. It's uniquely important to the Java community. Can you talk about, though, this move recently? So, of course, there are many foundations that have Java projects beneath them. I'm thinking of the Apache Foundation, of course, the Linux Foundation are the sort of giants in that space. Talk to me about the need for a new foundation, though. How is Commonhaus different?
So this is this is the question I get all the time. Apache and Eclipse are wonderful organizations and have served many projects very well. So I do want to be clear at the top. This throws no shade on those two organizations at all because they've done epic and heroic work. But when I talk to I'm sorry, if you hear clicking noises, everybody in the Ethernet, it's because I need a fidget toy and I am clicking my pen. So that is what that is.
Fair enough.
I just realized, I'm like, I have a clicky fidget toy. I should probably clarify what this sound is. We have a lot, like, different maintainers have really spent their time and effort building up their projects in different ways. One of the good things about Apache that they talk about is the Apache incubator, right? And doing things in the Apache way. And so if you start a project with Apache and you don't know what you're doing, they have the incubator, they have an established process, they can help you get from an idea to a functioning open source project, right? Using their way, it's all spelled out. And that's how that's how you go and grow. Eclipse has an excellent environment for a lot of multi-vendor projects. They have very detailed contribution guidelines and also hugely well-defined processes that you could follow. And both of them will say they're trying to be more flexible. But the projects that I'm specifically building this new thing for are projects like Jackson. Jackson has existed forever, right? It's 15 plus years, minimum 18 years, probably. Like, it's old, right? It's an old library, which does not mean it's not evolving, right? It just means it's been around for a while. So everybody knows what Jackson is. Everybody knows how Jackson's built. Tattoo has a few people working with him. So it's not just him by himself, but he has a name for, like, his project has its own name. It has its own identity. It's been around forever. He has his own processes for doing things. So for him to, like, one of the things that I want to do is help him bridge into a foundation or an organization that can guarantee the license, help him do leadership transitions, most importantly. Like, for me, leadership transition should be normal, right? Like, it should be easier to transition maintainers rather than somebody getting stuck with the thing forever, right? There's no magic. Everybody's like, well, you're not going to magically find the next maintainer, Erin. It's like, no, it doesn't make magic, it doesn't make maintainers randomly come from the sky. But we have, like, difference in the landscape wise, right? We have Tidelift, who will pay maintainers, for example. So if we have maintainers that are supported by other companies, it should be easier for me as a foundation to help transition between maintainers, right? To keep a project going, even if it remains a very, very small team. So, like, what I want to do for projects like Jackson is bring this continuity help for projects without having to say, thou shalt do everything my way. Because I don't feel like I need to. Like, you already understand how to use GitHub and issues and PRs and all that stuff. I don't need to do that. You already have a very good build process. Why do I need you to redo that? I don't. Like, everything that I want to do is, like, how much can I streamline, optimize? Do I ever need to do it at all? Like, what's actually legally required? Actually, not all that much. I mean, there's some things that are. Being a nonprofit, a 501c6, does bring some boxes. Like, there are some actual constraints that do come with that status. But one of the things I want to avoid is, like, paperwork for paperwork's sake. And if there's not a legal reason why I have to do it, I don't want to do it. If I don't need you to change all of your build processes, I don't need you. Like, there's incentive to improve some things, and to the extent that I can get my project maintainers working together to offset some of the cost, like, the secure supply chain stuff is going to bring a lot of changes to how we do things, because we need to have we need to have manifests, we need to have blah, 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 all the things. And I'm not going to remember all of that because I was traveling for the last 3 weeks. So there are things with lots of hand gestures that no one on the podcast can see. Many hand gestures. But so, like, I want to bring the benefits of continuity help, like long-term help, and we still have that guarantee, like, to join the foundation after this bootstrapping period. By the way, we can talk, there's a little asterisk there for right at this minute. But once we do official transfer, like, the foundation will own the IP. which is usually, your domain names, your trademarks, even if it's trademark in use, that kind of thing. And that will include some stuff about, okay, now the project can't easily change the license anymore. Like the maintainer can't just go off and do that, which is what you want. But I want to do that with as few strings attached or obligations imposed is maybe the better word, right? As I can. And that gets to interesting differences of opinion. It's fascinating when you talk to people about open source, because some people have it's not open source if there's only one vendor, right? And so it's like,
Right.
okay, if I have a primary, if there's one company that's primarily pushing a project forward and it's making progress and it's moving forward, I don't care, honestly. If it keeps the project healthy and it keeps it moving forward, fantastic, right? If they're going to partner with me and we're going to make sure everything keeps building, and then that's great. If there's a primary interested party that's focused on moving the project forward and keeping it healthy, yes, that's all I care about. I'm a little less about the must-have 3 vendors for it to be real. I don't care about that so much.
All right. Yeah, so a lot there to unpack, I think. And so maybe let's begin with the way that Commonhaus is ensuring that these organizations are able to do just that. So I thought it was interesting, on your homepage, you do talk about nurturing and, ensuring that these organizations have what they need to get going, which kind of makes it sound like it's for open source projects that are at the early stages of development. But what you're talking about with, was it Jackson, that has been around for a while, and it has this sort of new need for governance, which I think you're also addressing in terms of
sort of. So
license.
So it's actually funny, because we're not looking for young early stage projects. We're looking for the late stage or middle stage, things that are established, right? Which still at this point do need things to move forward. Most of the time we're looking for alternate ways to raise funds. Not always, but sometimes. And it's interesting, because traditionally foundations have been, we are not funding, we're not fundraising, we're not doing anything with money. But we're now in an era where there's Buy Me a Coffee, Ko-Fi, Patreon, Kickstarter. Like there's 80 million ways to make money, right? Including open source collective under Open Collective, right? So we want to make sure that if you don't have any one of those other ways, right, we can help you route money directly so that you can have funds. So like the best example of that is SDK Man, which is one of our projects. He actually uses Open Source Collective to collect funds, but he basically has enough people supporting him to offset all of his infrastructure costs. Wow. So he's flat, right? So he's got enough funds coming in to match his spend for all of the platforms that he tests, which is ACEs. Like that's exactly what you want, right? And to the extent that I don't want to get in the place where I'm on the hook as the foundation necessarily to provide infrastructure, but I do want to help, help projects raise enough funds to cover whatever their infrastructure needs are, because every project has a different footprint for what they need. And I think that that's like reasonable. A difference, right? But it's like we're still going through some of that. Yeah, but it's like helping each project get to a break-even place so that they're stable and they can keep running. That's what I want to be able to do. There are some other things I want to be able to do. Like there is a give the foundation money versus give an individual project money. You can do either way, right? If you give the foundation money, 501c6, I can't myself, I can't just spend money just on any one project. I feel like with that money, I have to be able to do it for everybody. But there are things I would like to do. Like I would like to, if I have enough piles of money beyond legal, like paying for lawyers who are expensive, paying for lawyers and accountants is where most money goes just instantly. But after that, like I actually would love to contract hire tech writers and have them go through different projects, because all open source projects are always short on having docs that are written well. We know we have writers who are actually hurting for funds because of AI ate their jobs. So if I can help fix, everybody wins, let's do this and, get everybody into a better place. I would love to do that. And then I do that for all the projects, right? Like I would be working on hiring writers to work across all the projects. And it's similar. If I have enough money, I'd like to get designers for any project that feels like they want a new logo. or new website design or stuff like that. Which sounds so dumb, but gets people so excited. He just wants a cooler logo. Like, seriously, they want good stickers. So
I love this. This is so necessary, and it's the sort of labor that I think it's kind of pushed off. It's like glue work. It's the sort of thing that isn't maybe
but
flashy.
that's what I want to do.
Yeah. That's amazing. Okay, so this explains a lot of what you have been up to at Commonhaus. So do you also work on some of the fundraising as well then? I mean, that's not a small task, right?
It is not a small task. At the moment, like, Commonhaus is super young. It's baby. It's super baby. So I haven't done a full fundraising push. I'm rolling out advisory board now, which is advisory board tiers. We do have individual contributors, which is just the average humans. One thing I would like to get to, I haven't had a full membership drive yet either, although I intend to. For Americans, like, I kind of want this to be like the National Public Radio of foundations. So rather than being supported by companies, I would rather it be supported by the $8 a year from developers, like just normal people, all pitching in to help.
I love that idea.
Rather than having it be, because, and this is, again, it's throwing no shade, but some of the other foundations really are driven by corporate donations. Like, it is very much corporate money that makes the foundations go, and their budgets are big. They're big, right? And that's because, you know, they're just reliant on very deep pockets. And sometimes, depending on who you talk to and what the level of cynicism is, people are feeling the corporate politics a little more than they want. And so it's a very rebellious kind of feel for this too, this Commonhaus thing. It's about developers helping each other. Smaller, like, some of these projects, they're small. Some of them are big, but some of them are small. But it's all very dedicated developers supporting each other, really, is what it's about. And to the extent that I can change, I begged, borrowed, and stole, whatever.
Stealed.
Words. Stealed is way better.
That's good.
I just stole stuff from everywhere. So, like, the advisory board structure I'm going for is something more like what GNOME does, right? So the GNOME Foundation has an advisory board where corporate sponsors can give money to help support GNOME, but they don't get a vote. They're not on the board because they're not members, right? But but any vendor who gives money, who wants to tell me how to do stuff, I will absolutely take that advice for 100. Like, yes, bring me all your advice. I would love all of it because I don't know all the things. So they get advisory roles. They just don't get a vote. The developers, it's a completely developer-run organization.
Talk to me about the idea of security and maintainership, because I think everyone has the Z exploit on their mind, right? And this is precisely what happened there, you know, weaponizing not only sort of bad behavior towards maintainers, right? Sort of abusing them, telling them, oh, you know, pay attention to my PR. I'm not going to give you any money, but, you know, this is somehow, the onus is on you, or I'm going to give you
this is like the weirdest,
it
really is the weirdest ecosystem right now. I maintain a couple random projects. Like, I'm actually weirdly not a library maintainer. I just maintain other random crap because I like it. And it's interesting because there is this mix. You do still have people who want to help, but you have a lot more people who just want it now and they're very entitled about it. And it's like, wow, is that how you were raised? Really? That's something. It's just wild. It's wild. And there are things we're going to have to sort out over time for this maintainer piece to make sense. Like, the XD situation called out a lot of stuff, but one part is that the developer was isolated, right? So one thing I'd like to make sure is all of my maintainers know each other and they can talk to each other and they're not alone. And they have like the Rolodex of who they can call, which is not like they won't have other people also, right? But it's like, I can at least make sure they have one avenue where they can be like, could you look at this response I have? Because this doesn't make any sense to me, right? And to the extent I can work with companies like Tidelift to help make sure that maintainers have support and they're not by themselves, like, yes, let's partner in that way, please, 100%. Because I don't think anybody should feel that alone. In terms of finding the next maintainer, that starts to get interesting because we know you can't just, it's like the typical meritocracy was like, oh, well, you know, they have some PRs. The PRs look legit. Well, guess what? With XE, yeah, there were some PRs. They looked legit until they weren't. So it's like, oh, how are we going to do this now? Like, there's a whole vetting thing that we've got to sort out. Like, are you a state actor? Is this thing on? We don't know how that's going to work. I don't know that everybody has figured out how that's worked. Like, right now, I'm good because literally I know everybody. Everybody that's, you know, on my little list of people who are the top, like the contacts for all of my projects, I actually know the humans in person. And I would like to see if we can keep that, right? We know the people in person, or like keep it within, you know, X degrees where everybody actually knows the human that they're talking about. And if that means in a couple years when we're transitioning maintainers, if that means we have to organize some meetups so you can meet the next people, the next person that's going to take over, whatever, great, we can do that. But I do think like part of all this security stuff is going to have to be, are you who you say you are? Like your PRs are great, but are you really who you say you are? It's a whole different environment. I don't know. I don't think there's any easy way out of that one. But the Java community is particular, like out of that particular ecosystem, not that that's the only one I want to look at, but people do know each other, and we have a couple forums where people to start interacting like we do then end up meeting up at various conferences. So making sure that you know the next person is actually somewhat feasible with the Java ecosystem, because there's enough conferences and enough places in the world we could orchestrate a people meeting kind of thing, so that you know who's who.
Yeah. And I think you make that pretty clear on the Commonhaus website too, right? Talking about it being a collaborative environment, nurturing growth and sustainability. Yeah. So I didn't quite know what that meant. And I was certainly going to ask, like, what does collaborative mean?
There's other things I want to do too. But like, it's like, I'm trying not to, there's so many things I want to do, but it's like, Erin, calm the hell down. Get the thing real first, then do the next thing. You know, it's like I don't want to get ahead of myself. There's a whole bunch of legal crap that just has to be settled soon, and I need to focus on that right now. But I am starting to talk to some other people that I know. I want to start trying to get some other people driving some of this content too. But like, I want to start working on content pipelines where it's not a new Commonhaus YouTube channel, because it's like we've got so many channels already. I don't necessarily need one that's foundation specific, but I'd like to partner with one of the ones that exists and be like, all right, let's do a deep dive of how Jackson works, right? Like, here's all of the internals of Jackson. So like, if you want to contribute to Jackson, here's everything you should probably know about how Jackson works, why it works the way it does, why when you raise a PR it might not get accepted, you know, like all of that stuff, like to go really deep with each one of my projects to just get more background information out there, so that people can contribute more constructively. Because one of the things that I have heard is, for some libraries, there's so few people maintaining it, it's almost more work to review the PR than it is to just do the fix. Right? It's like, because absolutely. The PR is too big, or is too weird, or they did something wonky, or they only went for their specific use case and they didn't understand that, like, if they bump this, it like knocks over the whole rest of the store. You know, it's metaphors again, and talk about, you know, stores like your bowls and china shops, I guess is what my brain was painting for me, which nobody else could see. But it's that kind of thing. When I was young, and we used to do the way WebSphere Application Server used to work on ZOS, we would have the level, like you'd have the development team, and then when the product was released, we would fork off a whole new stream, and the level 3 and service teams would take over. This is a whole different organization. And so at that time, usually after the .1 and .2 releases, right? After you finish all the stuff that wasn't quite finished at GA time, we would officially hand everything over. And one of the things that was interesting about that was we did a service transfer education, like literally called service transfer education. And what your job was is if you were the person who delivered a feature, line item feature, pick what we called it that year. Your job was to write an entire, weirdly, it was often still in a presentation format, which is like, why would you make a PowerPoint out of this? But it was literally, here's all the error messages. Here's what's supposed to happen. Here's what was supposed to be delivered. Here's what here person I'm dumping on you. That's going to have to support this later. Here's all the stuff that you need to know about what changed or what, and it was super detailed because the level 3 people had to actually understand, if I see this error because of this new function, here's where I have to go look to figure out what happened. And here's the general flow of how this stuff's supposed to work. And so what we don't have for open source projects is we don't have service transfer education, really. It's not a thing. It's all volunteer. So I would like to coordinate for some of my projects, okay, let's pick a channel, whichever one's your favorite for how to deliver this content, and let's go through a deep dive of how this works. So somebody else could actually contribute meaningfully and make your life easier rather than just trying to have to guess, give them the guided tour. That is something I'd like to do in terms of fostering that collaborative spirit kind of thing, but getting people armed with more information.
I love this. You're not only clarifying some of the questions that I had, but you're anticipating my question about the roadmap at Commonhaus, which is precisely where I wanted to go with this. And so it sounds like you have a whole sort of list of exciting things that you're hoping to implement. I think the danger is, right, how do we scale personal Rolodexes or things that we've seen, or just the labor that you are clearly putting into this. I mean, these are not small initiatives, especially.
No, they're not small. And I'm very much the hamster in the wheel right now, which is okay. I do have help. I'm not by myself. But I do realize that I get it's my job right now to make this real. Right. So it's I'm the one with the most cycles to spend to make this actually happen. So therefore I will focus and make this actually happen. The target, we have to get through the actual binding legal agreements between now and April. So making sure all of that actual text makes sense and says what we want and doesn't say what we don't want it to say, that's actually harder than you think, or than it should sound like. And it's interesting because there's certain bases you always have to have covered with these legal agreements, right? But I think the way we also traditionally write these legal agreements is exactly why some foundations and organizations feel really heavy and very foreign and you're taking everything away from me, right? And it all has to do with words. And lawyers are very expensive, and I'm bleeding money right now arguing with them because it's language is just very picky. Legal language is very picky, and trying to come out with a compromise where it's I know you want to use this legal word, but if you use this legal word, most of the people that I'm dealing with aren't going to understand what that word means. Do we have to use it? They're well, it's more efficient. I'm I don't care. Which is more important, that it's efficient or that people understand the words? Because if it's only lawyers that understand it, then as far as I'm concerned, it serves no purpose. Right? I understand lawyers eventually are going to have to read, but it's no, I want to be able to understand what I'm signing. And if I can't, then I'm not going to sign it, which is, right?
Yeah.
Come on.
Seems reasonable to me.
Yeah. But so getting through that is step one. So I have 9 or 10 projects right now that I'm trying to get through this bootstrapping phase. We're finalizing all the bylaws. We've got to do all the binding agreements and get all that stuff signed. And then I'll really start chasing more fundraising and membership drives and all that stuff in earnest. It's hard to really feel like I can go push for everybody to join tomorrow, although I would really be glad if everybody joined tomorrow. I'd love to have elections, which means I need more members. But I kind of also feel like I want things a little more baked, too.
Yes.
So,
and we haven't even stated this in the podcast yet. When was Commonhaus Foundation founded?
Well, interestingly, it was an idea 1 year ago.
Ah,
Uh, and then we got the foundation turned around and rebranded and launched last April. And it's in a bootstrapping phase basically until next April. So it'll officially be like done, signed, sealed, delivered, done in a few months.
amazing. And if folks are interested in joining the foundation in the capacity of maybe maintainers of a project, how do they go about applying to be under your auspices?
Well, I have written, oh my gosh. So this whole thing I talked about earlier with avoiding paperwork at all costs basically means that everything is automated to death. And so from the website, like if you go and look at the community guidelines, right, it says here's how you submit a project. And it's basically you open a discussion on GitHub because that triggers a whole bunch of actions and we go and do all of these things and everything is, automated because
All right.
nobody wants to do paperwork.
So we will provide a link to the website in the show
Mm-hmm.
notes then to make sure that folks can do that.
Yes, please.
All right. And is there also a link on there for folks who want to contribute to some of the projects?
Yes, it's all there. It's all on the
all
community page.
One-stop shop. Amazing.
One-stop shop. I did try to make sure, here, me as a developer, not marketing person, not person usually. Yeah, I made sure that there was a call to action on all of my pages. I even figured out what that word means. I'm kidding, but
Well done. Everybody clap.
Yay! It's so dumb, but I'm sure every other person who only writes back-end code is going to be like, oh, right, I know exactly what she means there. Like, yeah, right. I had to go make sure there are buttons and clear things to do. Oh, that was also like coming up with, it's a dumb thing, right? Think talking about logos, but like writing all of the automation for how we do votes and stuff, like how we make decisions transparently and everything. I hammered out all of that automation while having some of my founding, interested parties vote on what the logo should be, what colors we should use, what font we should use, which is just silly. So all the branding and everything is kind of, community vetted, you might say.
That's a good way to do it. You get the buy-in, you make sure that it's working for everybody. I can't tell how often, things look good in my mind and then I, put them out into the ether, and suddenly I'm made aware that actually it resembles something that I did not intend, or that the kerning is no good. So yes, it's very good to workshop.
It's so people get so passionate about kerning. It's ridiculous.
The kerning situation, it's out of control. Yeah. And we kind of alluded to some of the bodies that you've buried over the years to keep on my morbid metaphors here, but you working at Red Hat and IBM, of course, very committed open source organizations there, and you are a maintainer yourself. You had some distinctions about the type of maintaining that you've done, but you have seen things in that way. Have you been involved in any foundations before Commonhaus, though?
Myself, no. Right?
Okay.
Like as an individual person involved, no.
Yeah.
But have I had colleagues who are on the Eclipse board or are Apache contributors? Yes. So absolutely. I would say foundation adjacent, right? I know what they have to do. I've talked to members of all of those foundations about what their experiences are.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And the kinds of things they have to do. But again, from a Java perspective, like I haven't maintained Java libraries per se. I have some other maintainer roles I write stupid stuff. If you go look at my I just write ridiculous things because it's fun. And some of those things people actually like to use for no reason I can figure out. And so it's interesting because I do see all the maintainer joy, the mixed bag that is.
Yeah.
And it is a mixed bag. Sometimes it's awesome and sometimes it's not.
Well, you were being overly humble. The contributions that you've made, your long tenure in the industry is worthwhile and noteworthy and worth celebrating, which we do celebrate here. So I know that the enthusiasm is there, and it seems like you really are addressing a need that many folks in this space are seeing. And really, I mean, now is such an important time in open source, not only because of these exploits, which are top of mind and certainly got a lot of press, But also, you know, among developers, I mean, Ashley Williams actually attended Monktoberfest this year and gave a really moving talk, I thought, where she actually talks about the idea that sustainability, which is, you know, part of the lexicon around open source, I think, is almost toothless at this stage in open source and how broken it is. And she instead argues that we are in the midst of open source market failure. Wow, you know, those are fighting words, but I think
we really are
necessary.
like because we're in. I mean, you have governments and everybody who say, well, you have to use open source. The problem is that open source often means just somebody else maintains it and we can just see it, right? So it doesn't always mean we are going to chip in, right? So there are some there are some gaps here. I haven't figured out how. There's a friend of mine who is a longtime Apache committer, and he would like to see some riders to licenses, and it would be interesting. I haven't tried to do it yet because I'm like one thing at a time.
Yeah.
But in his mind, the interesting rider to the license would be if you use this software in a product that you ship, you must allow your employees to contribute back. There are a lot of employees, they're not allowed to contribute back. Like the company will forbid their employees from contributing to open source. They're not allowed.
Oh,
right. And that compounds the problem. So like, what if the rider is not about permission? Like, you know, it's not in like, you have to release all your source code or anything like that. It's no, if you use this, your employees must be okay to contribute back, if that's all it is.
yeah. I mean, that just seems like the least that could happen, right? It's like,
right?
It's not that you must contribute. It's that you're permitted.
Yeah, because like they're go look. You should, as you talk. Oh no, as you interview companies, like as you talk to your companies, like you should just ask them: are your employees allowed to contribute to open source? Some of them will say no. You use open source. If the answer is yes, do you allow your employees to contribute back? That should be the follow-on. And if the answer is not yes, we should all be asking why.
Does any company not use open source? Are you kidding me? They might not even know. Yeah, but I mean, obviously.
I'm exactly right. It's always that follow-on question, and I think you'll get the answer will be no more often than you expect.
Wow. Okay. Well, Erin, you're giving me a lot to chew on. I'm newly radicalized. Doesn't take much. Okay. Well, we are about out of time. But before we go, how can folks hear more from you, and what are your preferred social channels? We're already going to link to the website for the Commonhaus Foundation, but you know, where are you? Where are you at online, Erin?
Most of the time these days, I'm hiding out on Discord. I'm in the Commonhaus channel, but or the Commonhaus Discord server, but I'm in a bunch of others also. I have lately just had a very low profile on social. Actually, the best place to find me is outside of Discord is LinkedIn.
Okay.
I will actually but send me a message. Don't just try to connect when I don't know who you are. Message is fine. But you can find me on Discord too.
All right. Fair enough. So we'll provide a link to the Discord channel, although I assume, like everything else, it's probably linked on the Commonhaus website.
It
Beautiful.
is.
I know. I love this. Everything's so easy. Okay. And are you speaking at all in 2024? Are you going to be back at DevNexus? Or that's 2025.
Yes, that's 2025.
Yeah.
I hope to be back to DevNexus. We're only at the CFP stage for DevNexus.
Exciting.
I might be at Java 1. I'm doing... I actually haven't submitted my CFP for that, or my proposal for that, but I'm on the review committee. So I should be at that one. I was just at JConf 2 weeks ago. I am not the most frequent traveler. You will more likely see Andres out and about El Marais. And you will see him anywhere in Europe, more or less.
Spreading the good word.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, that works for me. I've really enjoyed speaking with you, Erin. Again, my name is Kate Holterhoff, Senior Analyst at RedMonk. If you enjoyed this conversation, please like, subscribe, and review the Monkcast on your podcast platform of choice. If you are watching us on YouTube, please like, subscribe, and engage with us in the comments.